Hey, what's up? Welcome back to the Little Anxious Creative Podcast. I got ahead of myself because I'm so excited and a little bit anxious about today's episode. I have my lovely friend Emily Chen, which, to be honest, I was very intimidated by in like the best way. Like I looked at her Instagram and was like, wow, this girl knows her shit. And when I met her in real life last September in Nashville at the Masters of Balayage Hero event, she was the sweetest, kindest, most pumping up my tires person that I have ever met. And I wanted you to know that Emily is the real deal. And I'm so excited to be interviewing her on my podcast series, How They Failed Their Way to Success. Emily knows failure, she knows mess up, but she also knows massive success. And I'm so honored that she took the time out of her schedule to share with us her story. And so get ready to sit down, relax, be inspired, be motivated, and kick your own butt a little bit as to what's holding you back. So let's get ready and dive in with Emily Chen. Oh my God, I'm so excited to be interviewing Emily Chen on The Anxious Creative. Welcome to the podcast.
I'm so happy to be here. Like, I'm so excited. And when you texted me 2 days ago, I was like, immediately yes, immediately yes.
Yeah,
Especially with the message that we're bringing through today.
Yeah, I am curious before we like jump right into like the messiness of life and business. How did you get into the hair industry?
So I was doing like really poorly in high school. I was having like a rough time. I wasn't showing up to classes and I was failing like every single class. And my mom was like super stressed out about me. So my cousin recommended this program that's like sponsored by our public schools where I can go to cosmetology half the day and then go back to high school the other half of the day and get like high school credit for it. So I did it mainly so I could like leave school and like not go back to it. I'm like, this is like absolutely perfect. It's gonna make like skipping school so much more practical.
Mhm.
And like logically, I'm like, it works.
Yeah.
And I just remember stepping into that classroom on the first day and smelling like I don't know, the hair color, even the perm solutions, whatever it was, something, I just liked something about it. And I stuck with it. And it was like, I knew that that's what I wanted to do, like first day in hair school. And also probably because like my family was like, you're not going to be a hairdresser. So I was instantly like, I'm going to be a hairdresser. I'm going to be like a really good hairdresser. So
Oh my gosh, we're the
um,
same. I'm like, tell me I can't do something, game on.
exactly. You want me to do something, just like tell me the opposite. Tell me to do the opposite.
Yeah.
So that's where I started. And then so right after high school, I ended up dropping out like the middle of my senior year. Right after high school, I started immediately like assisting, and I assisted for like 6 months, and then started on the floor at like this really nice high-end salon in my area. And I remember them sending me to my first hair show. It was IBS New York, and I was just enamored by like everything going on there. I was so just like, I didn't know that there was this whole other side of the industry, but I
Mhm.
instantly knew within like my first year of doing hair that like I wanted to do that. Whatever that was on stage that they were doing, like whatever it is, I want to do it. So I then just started looking for every opportunity to educate. So, and that was like the early 2000s. So really the only opportunity you would have to educate was to work for a brand. So I just
Mhm.
started contacting all the brands that we carried in the salon. I got a lot of no's. I got ignored a lot. And then eventually a couple of years later, I got picked up by this brand called Thermofuse. They're not around anymore, but I worked with them for about 12 years, and they sent me like everywhere. Like they were so gracious. They sent me to like all the premiere shows. They like sent me to Dubai to teach classes using
No
their
way.
product. I know, like everywhere. And like I was super underqualified. Like I'm not just having imposter syndrome right now. I literally like had no experience educating. They just kind of, they were a small family owned business and they were looking for people I was looking to educate, and they just kind of like threw me into it. But that was one of the best things they could have done, because through fucking up some things probably along the way, I learned so much. I learned how to be a better educator, a better teacher,
Mhm.
um, so on and so forth. Um,
So, what have been some like we're just going to get into it. What have been some of the biggest quote unquote failures that you've experienced early on in your career?
oh, like as a stylist,
Yeah.
dude, literally the first graduated bob I did on the floor. Oh my God. Okay. So I like, this is such a vivid memory because I was so mortified. I thought about it for like the rest of my life. I'm still thinking about it. So this woman came in. She was like one of my first clients. I had finished my assistant program. I was so excited to be this badass stylist. And she sits in my chair and she like the Posh Spice thing was in at that time. Everyone wanted the Karen cut. Like the Karen cut was like the coolest cut. Everyone wanted it. So she brought a picture of Posh Spice, like all of my clients did. And she's like, I want
I
this haircut. Do you remember that cut?
I remember doing like 5 times a day.
Yeah, it was like cropped up in the back and like really
Everyone.
exaggerated, like kind of wispy in the front.
Yeah.
So the Posh Spice cut that she showed me ended like here, right? Like
Mhm.
jaw length, and
Like
it was
big
like
dog
really
ears.
cropped tight. Yeah.
Yeah.
But she goes, I want this. Shows me a picture. She's like, but can we keep the length like right here? Because I want my hair long still. And so, of course, what did I say? I said, yes, we can do that. Because I'm a fucking magician. Yes, we can. Yes, we
Yeah.
can, Sally. So I start by cutting the back. And I knew that like to cut a graduated bob, you'd have to get right in there. So I did my first chop. And literally, as soon as I did my first chop, I like instantly fucking knew that from the nape of her neck, where I just cut to her goal, which was like below her collarbone in the front, was like, I don't know how many inches is that? That's like a 6 inch difference. So I'm like, shit. And she hasn't seen the back of her head yet. So I'm just like working away on the back of her head, sweating bullets. I don't even remember the conversation we had. I think I blacked out. I know she was talking to me and I was probably responding, but in my mind, I'm just like, how the hell, when I get to the front of her head where she can see where I'm cutting, what am I gonna do? So you know what I did? So I cut her cropped bob in the back, like really nice, short and cropped, like Posh Spice, all the way until the outside of the back of her head, right? I'm about to go to the front and I'm like sweating bullets because she's gonna see it. So what do? I take my razor and I go from the base of her nape all the way down to her goal length, which was like below her collarbone. I just sliced all the way down so that she had no idea the back of her hair was like it's like short as
She
hell. And I
won't
just
know until she gets home.
so I'm sweating and now I gotta do the other side. So I'm like, okay, she didn't see it. We're good still. We're good still. So
Yeah.
I had to do the other side. So I did the other side. This whole time I'm looking around at all of my colleagues, just kind of looking in my direction every so often because I know they're judging me. But like back in the early 2000s, I felt like you couldn't fuck up. Like we weren't allowed to like we weren't
Mm.
given grace to be like you can make a mistake and still be good. It was like fake it till you make it. Don't ever show fear. Don't ever show vulnerability. Have a giant ego. Act like you know what you're doing. So that's exactly what I did. No one came up to try to help me. None of the senior stylists did. I certainly wouldn't have asked for help because I had too much of an ego, right? I'm
Oh,
fresh on the
100%.
floor. I'm a stylist. I know what I'm doing. So I'm just
Mhm.
shitting my pants internally with no one to comfort me. I finish her haircut. It looks insane, but she still has no idea that the back of her neck is exposed. I don't show her the back of her head, and she leaves. And then I never see her again. I've never seen her again. And I just have always thought to myself, I was waiting. I was waiting to get pulled aside by a manager saying, like, oh, your client yesterday called. She never called.
Well,
She
Emily, I have
never.
a surprise for you today. We have a guest coming on. Please welcome.
No! This interview's over. Oh my God.
Just turns into Jerry Springer here.
So I think about her like to this day. I'm like, I wonder what happened and who fixed it and like what?
Oh, I remember rinsing out a client's root retouch and realizing I missed a whole quadrant and being so insecure. Like now I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, I like made a silly mistake. I did
Right.
3/4 of your hair. I'm so
You just
sorry.
say it.
I don't have time to do it right now, but I'll have you back and I'm not charging you." But at the time it was like new. I was like first couple years
You're trying
and
to prove yourself.
I was like, "It's the back left. She won't notice." So I just didn't say anything and I parted it so you couldn't see it. Never came back.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay, but these are the reasons why it's so important to talk about the things we're talking about today, failing up, because I never want any of my assistants or my first like level stylists or any stylist working in my salon to ever feel the way that I did and the way that you probably
No.
did, where if you fuck something up, that you can't say anything. That if you fuck something up and you let people know that you're just a big ass failure, right? Like
Yeah.
I almost take it to the point where I'm like, I encourage you to fuck up. Just kidding. Like,
Yeah.
obviously do a good job, but like, tell me if you fucked something up. It's okay. Let's figure it out together.
Yeah, like you're human and like
Yeah.
humans make mistakes. And even when I first started educating, I was like, I can't be an educator until I never make a mistake again. And which was like a
Right.
really interesting, I was like, wow, where is that coming from? And then I got to a point where I was like, I hope something happens while I'm teaching a class so that I can show people real time how I would respond to it
Yes.
in real life.
Yes.
But it took me like 17 years in the industry to get to that place.
It's
And
okay,
I
but we got
remember
there.
yeah, I wanna share one quick story with you because I feel like people don't share these stories enough, and we hide like, shame hides in the shadows. The more we can
Mhm.
bring to light the fact that we all make mistakes, the more we can build the confidence. Because I think we got lucky getting into the industry when we did, when there wasn't social media. And, like, we
Oh,
just had
yeah.
those big books where it was like, "Can I get this
Oh my
haircut?"
god.
Right? Where we didn't have this, like, comparisonitis of, like, "Oh my gosh, like, look at like, that person's only 2 years out of hair school, and,
Mhm.
like, look at their work," and, like, it's all, like, false assumptive
Right.
comparison.
You're just seeing the good stuff.
Yeah, and so I wanna share this story where I had this it was I lived in, like, a small city of, like, 200,000 people, and it was, like, a local DJ at the club that came in, and he's like, "I want you to thin the shit out of my hair with a razor," and I hadn't really been taught I had a razor, but I hadn't really taken any much
Oh my god, was he
education.
kind of emo?
Yeah, it like, I mean, it was, like, circa, like,
Yes.
2003, 2004,
Yeah.
right? Um, so I am, like, thinning it out the best I know how because he wanted to, like, kind of faux hockey mess, and he's
Yeah.
like, "More," and I was like, "Oh, okay," so I kept thinning it out. He's like, "No, like, I want it thin," and so I kept and then I looked down, and there was, like, a dime size bald spot and, like, right here, like, on the top of his head, and then a quarter size right at the front, and I was, like, panicked. I'm like, "Oh my god, what do I do?" So I just took pomade and I styled over the bald spots
Stop.
and let him go, and I remember being like, "If my boss finds out, I'm getting fired." And he was, like, a regular at the salon, but he never came back to me.
Oh my god.
Like, and
He's
now
like that.
like yeah, now I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, I like, 1, I'm not taking any thinner, it can't." Like, I would
Right.
know I'd be able to
You have
stand in the
boundaries.
confidence of knowing that I'm the professional. But when I
Right.
was younger and I thought they knew best and I have to be yes, 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 the only answer to a
Mhm.
question was yes, I made so many mistakes because of that.
Same. Same.
So, what has been your most recent failure?
Oh my
If you're
god.
able to share, because sometimes they're
Let me
too fresh
see.
to share, right? But
Right. Well, actually, I was kind of embarrassed about this one because I should know better. So I had a client maybe about a month or so ago. She was booked in as a balayage and cut, quote, a balayage and cut, and she was a brand new client. So oh, that's weird. I didn't expect that. I don't know
me
what's happening.
neither. I have no idea.
Okay. But anyway, that's not doing it for you.
I don't know how you did it. You had
It
the thumbs
happens.
up earlier too. Maybe it's
Oh,
because 'cause you're on your phone. Anyway,
maybe, maybe. But
say
anyway, so
sorry.
I had her booked in my book as a balayage and cut. And so I already knew she wasn't gonna be a balayage. I'm like 99% sure she's not an actual balayage. They never are. They're always some modern blonding service that takes like 4 hours. Because my balayage and cuts book out for 2.5 hours. My
Yeah.
modern blonding books out like 4 hours. So I'm
Mhm.
like, she's probably that. She comes in and immediately I know it's a corrective color. She has like a really harsh demarcation line. Her hair is super, super blonde. Her roots are super, super dark and she wants something melty. So I'm like, okay, I got to blur that line. And I honestly don't know what came over me. I feel like maybe I was feeling a little overconfident there, but explained to her that, you are booked in for a balayage and cut, which books out for 2.5 hours. You are my last client, so I absolutely don't mind staying to do your color, but it's going to be more of a modern blonding service. And for you, it might take more like 3 to 3.5 hours, which I should not have said because I should have added on more time to that because it was such a harsh line. I'm like, that was stupid of me. I think I was tired. It was the end of my day. But anyway, I'm really big on quoting time and quoting money. I always talk about time and money. So I wanted to make sure that she knew that she was going to be paying more for a balayage service should we continue the service, like where she has the
Mhm.
option to. And after I explained my reason why and what we were going to do, she was for it. She's like, let's do it. So of course it takes me longer. It's like 3.5 hours in and I'm just toning her. So she's got like another like 45 minutes to go because I have to cut her and blow dry her. And at this point, she's like on a time crunch because she didn't plan on being in my chair for longer than that. So I was feeling a little bit rushed. And when I finished her, as I was blow drying her, the line was not as blended as I wanted it to be. I could still see it. And it was bothering me. And I felt super annoyed with myself because I didn't give her the proper expectations. And you know what a psycho I am about proper expectations, and I didn't do it. So I told her I could do this in 3.5 hours, and I should not have. So anyway, I'm blow drying her, and she can see. Well, I don't know if she could see the line as much as I could. I'm like really picky with my work, so I'm blow drying her, and then halfway through, when I like confirmed myself in my head, I'm like, okay, I need to like I want to redo this. She had not said anything, and I was like, hey, just so you know, I don't know if you're seeing this, but like if you look right here, there's still a little bit of your line that's in there, and it's I did tell you that I could blur that out within this time frame, and I underestimated the amount of work that it would be because I quoted you this and I quoted you this much time. I'm going to like, I want you to come back, next week, and I want to like do a little more work. It'll be on me because you were expecting this price, yada, yada, yada.
Good for you.
So,
That's like very integral of you.
well, I like, I really believe in that. If you quote
Mhm.
someone a certain price, and I normally don't, I normally say it might be this much, it might be a little more, it might take
Mhm.
longer. And I didn't say those
It's the
words. So for
one
me,
time.
it's like, I don't think that's fair to the client.
Yeah.
For all my grade transitions, I'm like, listen, they take about 8 to 10 hours, but it could take 13. It could take 14. And if you're okay with my hourly price up until however long, then we'll do it,
Mhm.
But I didn't say that. So anyway, I got her back in, like fixed it. It looks great. And now she's, a client. And she's
Yeah.
awesome.
And when you think about it, like, at the end of the day, it's not a story of failure.
Yeah.
Or you're like, "It is."
Well, it feels like one right now. But
Aw,
it's like,
yeah.
okay. I've always like the mistakes are okay to make as long as three things happen afterwards.
Let's hear it.
One, you acknowledge the mistake. Two, you make it right somehow. And three, you learn from it to prevent it from happening again. So in that
Yes.
situation, one, I instantly acknowledged it. Two, I made it right. I worked for free afterwards. I shouldn't have
Mhm.
had to do that, but I felt like I did because I
Yeah.
told her to be this price and it was not. And then three, learn from it. Like, yeah, I'm not going to do that again. Like, I don't know why I did that in the first place.
And it's always a time that you're like, I can totally bend the rules," and then it's
Oh
like
my God. It
life
always
has this
is.
funny way of, like I even think, like, when I think of, like, my personal life, anytime that I've had, like, a really harsh judgment about something, like, "I would never," or, like, "I can't believe people," is like life comes and, like, slaps me in the face with the exact scenario that I
Oh
have
my
to go through,
God.
and I'm like, "Oh," like, I mean, this is I talk openly about the fact that I was married and divorced in my 20s. I remember being like, "I can't believe people would get divorced after 2 years. Clearly, they don't try very hard." And I got married at 26 and divorced at 28, and I was like, "Oh, I get it now. Yeah, I
Yeah.
understand." And it's like as soon as you set we set ourselves up for failure hoping to people please, I think, maybe a little bit, or like maybe the rules don't apply this time, or, I've been
Hmm.
able to do it this way before. But I liked your like the 3 things about the mistake because I remember having someone working with me, administratively, and she was beating herself up over a mistake she made, and I went, "Look, you've never made this mistake before." And so I have so much room for the fact that, like, mistakes are opportunities to learn and grow. If the mistake
Absolutely.
continues to happen,
Then it's not a
then we
mistake.
gotta talk about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think how have you developed I'm gonna make an assumption that you're extremely hard on yourself. Or you
Yeah.
maybe set
That's
really
probably
high
true.
expectations. How have you developed, like, the graciousness to be okay with making mistakes or having failures?
When I get into my head about like if I'm really beating myself up about something, I honestly just think to myself like, okay, what if I was someone who I was training? What if I was someone I
Mm.
was mentoring? Because if I ever, and I have had people who I'm mentoring like express to me that they're beating themselves up, or I can just see that they're beating themselves up, I'm instantly just like, don't you dare.
Yeah,
Don't. Like you made a mistake and that's okay. And that's the only way you're gonna grow in this situation, right? Like what did you learn from the mistake? Awesome. You learned something new. That's freaking
yeah.
great. If they weren't making any mistakes, I'd be concerned.
Right, like because 'cause you're not taking chances. I remember I
Right.
fried someone's hair off once by accident, and I was beating myself up, and, like, the only solace I found was that her hair will grow back, and I'm like, "I have a tattoo that I hate." And I'm like, "I could never have been a tattoo artist ever
Oh,
because like, you mess up
the
someone's hair, it
pressure.
might take time, but it'll come back.
Hmm.
Tattoos, I would spiral into do you have tattoos that you don't like?
Yeah, actually, oh my God. So my eyeliner, I
Ooh.
I chalked my ID when I was 17 because I heard this lady in town was doing tattooed eyeliner. So I, as a 17-year-old, had her tattoo my wings on the inner and outer corners of my eyes, top and bottom liner, like a freaking raccoon, because that's how I wore my eyeliner then, and I was 17. And
Yeah, and it looked
it
awesome.
so I ended up just like for most of my adult life, I wore makeup, like heavy makeup over the eyeliner up until sometime during COVID. I found someone to laser it off my eyeballs. It was the craziest experience and very painful.
Yep.
The lesson learned. I'll never do that again.
Don't get tattoos on your face in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah, you know.
My next question was gonna be what's something most people would be surprised to know about you? And I feel like that's probably one. But is there what would be something and it doesn't have to be work related, but what would be something that people would be surprised to know about Emily Chen?
Oh my God. I'm so bad at this, like on the spot stuff.
That your go-to drink is a Manhattan?
Everyone knows that about me. That's public
It's
knowledge.
public knowledge, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people know that I dropped out of high school, but I don't know if a lot of people know why. So I hate going to gym class, hated going to gym class, hated being sweaty, especially if it were first period and then you have to like go to school the rest of your day and
I love that
just
I'm
be
literally,
gross.
like, grubby and sweaty from the gym while we're doing this.
Well, okay, as like a teenager, like
No, no,
again,
I
I
get it.
wore a lot of makeup, especially on my eyebrows because they didn't exist because I had just tweezed the shit out of them. So
Oh,
my eyebrows were like two little commas drawn on with brow pencil, right?
mhm.
And my school had a pool. So one of the things you had to do for gym class was swim, and I was absolutely not going to get into that pool. First, I was like, "Oh, I'm on my period, right?" But you can only be on your period for so long, and then like weeks later, they're like, "Oh, really? You're still on your period?" So then I just stopped showing up. So I failed gym my junior year for not going. And then I didn't want to go to summer school for it, so I didn't. And then I started my senior year. They wanted me to swim again, so I failed gym also my senior year. I failed gym 2 years in a row. And in the middle of my senior year, they said, Emily, if you want to graduate, you have to take like 2 sets of like basically gym courses like in summer school. And I said, no, I'd rather just drop out. And then I did.
Wow. And so have you ever gone back and graduated? GED?
No, no, I got
No.
my GED. They
Yeah,
made me, my guidance counselor like made me get my GED under duress. I'm glad they did that.
yeah. That's really cool. Like, I mean, that's a like, thank you for sharing so openly. That's huge, and, like, I would never have known that about you. I
So
also hate it. Like, I mean, I was a big swimmer growing up, but I didn't like we didn't do swimming in school, and I would have hated having to get ready or, like, that whole thing.
yeah. I mean, but that kind of propelled my career because, like, when I dropped out of, like, when I went to hair school, like, my family was already freaking out. They're like, you better go to college. And then
Mhm.
I drop out of high school on top of that, and they're like, oh my God, Emily's going to end up in jail. I don't know what they were thinking, but it was not good. And that's like literally, I feel like one of my biggest drivers when I first started in this industry, like wanting to be successful so badly, just wanting to prove people wrong
Yeah.
out of spite. I wanted to be successful out of spite. And I guess spite's a big driver, but now
I
my family's really supportive. They're really proud of me, but took a minute.
Well, and I think at the time, like, I didn't really have like, it wasn't like my parents were like, "Yes, go to hair school. This is gonna be an amazing career opportunity," right? Like, I think they were a little concerned if it like, they're like, "This will be a nice hobby or, like, a side thing that, like, when you're a mom and you're staying at home, you can cut your
Right.
kids' hair." Like, that was, like, kinda like the premise. Um, but also my own hairstylist in high school told me, "If you wanna be able to financially provide for yourself, do not become a hairstylist."
Oh, that
And
breaks my
so
heart.
yeah, and I hear from people every day that, like, a lot of people weren't encouraged to get into the industry, and there wasn't a lot of
Mm.
support, and I think it's pretty rad that, like, what you've created it for yourself, what I've created it for me, and what so many people have that didn't have the support or the encouragement or the push or, feeling like I felt like a failure for not getting
Mhm.
a university degree. And my parents, I mean, and I know like this was my own perception. This isn't what my parents put on me, but they have this frame in their house. And it's like my eldest brother's convocation picture from university, my middle brother's convocation picture, and then my high school graduation. And that, like, like it was like an embarrassment thing I carried for a while that, like,
Oh,
oh, because I was always told growing up that like a degree was security, a degree was
Hmm.
financial stability. And I think it's really cool that we can show people, one, you can create your own success, you can create your own path. And it doesn't mean there aren't bumps and bruises along the way, but that
Absolutely.
builds strength and resilience.
Absolutely.
So, how did you know that you wanted to be I mean, I guess you said you wanted to be an educator early on, and
Hmm.
you were. How did you know you wanted to get into salon ownership and all that stuff?
Okay, so the funniest thing is for years, I would always tell people that like I never want to own a salon because when I was teaching for Thermafuse, I ended up teaching a lot of business classes. Like I think one day, like we were at Premiere and they were just like, we need someone to teach a business class. And they're like, Emily, will you do it? Like kind of like marketing, that sort of
Yeah.
business class. So I'm like, sure, I don't own a salon, but why not? So I did it. And I had all these salon owners in my class. They seemed to really like it. And then like they just started having me teach more and more of these business classes. And throughout the years, I got to meet and get to know so many salon owners. And unfortunately, I felt like a lot of owners that I had met at that time were kind of like tired, like they were exhausted. Some of them were kind of jaded. And it put like this bad taste in my mouth about the idea of ownership. So I was like, you know what? Like maybe it's not for me. I'm making great money as a stylist and as an educator. Like I was a top stylist in the salon that I was working at, and I was an employee. So I had benefits. I had like, all of my things taken care of for me. And I'm like, I I don't want to own a salon. And I said that for so many years. And it wasn't until the salon that I was working at prior to opening began to feel a little more toxic. They're no longer open. I usually don't talk about this. I haven't in the past very much at all.
Mhm.
But they're no longer there. So, but this salon started feeling very toxic, and it just got to a point where I wasn't happy going to work, which is like so crazy for me because I absolutely love my job. But I remember just like sitting in my car after work thinking like I'm driving home in such an awful mood, like because of everything that I'm witnessing, and there was so much turnover, and I felt like this was kind of like my cue because I didn't want to at that point just go to another salon. And I felt like I had a lot of business knowledge just from teaching business classes. Like talk about imposter syndrome too when I was doing that, but that's another thing. um and so I just decided to open up Brooks and Harlow salon, and I'm really glad that I waited as long as I did. Like I had been in the industry for like maybe 18 years or so before I opened,
Mhm.
and got a lot of coaching, paid for a lot of coaching, like just to make sure I was doing things correctly because I knew that I didn't want to end up in the same shoes as the owner who owned the salon that was getting a little toxic,
Yeah.
because not like the thing is about salon owners, like I feel like especially commission owners have like a bad rap for being like toxic workplaces, right? But like
Mhm.
no salon owner ever goes into the industry thinking, "Ooh, I can't wait to open up my salon and be real toxic."
Totally.
No, it happens because maybe they need better systems, maybe they need some coaching, mistakes happen, and just
Mhm.
it ends up that way. So I think I was really scared of becoming that, and luckily I'm not. At least I don't think so at this point.
No, I mean, I've
No,
never
like I
been to
love
your
my
salon, but
team.
I feel like your company culture and your staff that I've met are amazing and love
Ugh,
you. And I think,
I
like,
love them so.
I yeah, I sometimes wonder because I know there is so much toxic I mean, I'm sure it's in other industries as well. I
Mhm.
wonder how many I remember hearing coworkers be like, "If I had a salon, I'd be paying us, like, 70% commission," and, like, just, like, not the business
Right,
understanding, and I wonder how many hairstylists are like, "Well, I want control, so I'll open up my own place," without the proper business knowledge or business plan,
right,
and I've heard that, like, most owners, like, don't actually, like, incorporate in paying themselves for the work of being a manager
right.
and like therefore have to work full time behind the chair and things like that. And then they don't have the time or energy to actually run the business, which I
I
mean,
mean, I didn't pay myself for a long time as an owner, but I knew that going in though, like I had those expectations. Like
yeah,
talk
you had
about
the
setting proper
investment.
expectations for yourself.
Yeah,
Um,
but you still managed it. I'm sure it
yeah.
seems like.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
very fortunate. I have an amazing team. Like I absolutely love them. And like I really pride myself on like we have like no turnover. Like everyone gets along really well. Like I
Yeah.
love it. I absolutely love it.
And
Absolutely
so
love it.
what was there did you have any fears about opening it up? Like, was there any like, "Oh my god, I, like, don't belong here," or like, "Who am I to do this?" Or
Oh my
what was,
God.
like, the biggest hurdle that you overcame in
Um,
solo ownership?
it was like probably one of the scariest things I've ever done in my life because I just, I'm like emptying out like my life savings to like open up this salon. Really scary. And like it's like when you first open and you're not sure what the revenue is going to look like, you know, I had mapped it out pretty well, but there was a part of me thinking like, what if it doesn't go well and I can't pay so and so? And so I started like figuring out like how much my car was worth, how much like a lot of my belongings were worth because I was going to sell that shit if I
Wow.
could not pay for someone's hourly. Like this was part of like my business plan in the very beginning. Um, so yeah, it was scary as hell. But I think what was the question again? I got off on a tangent.
Yeah, no, great question. What was the question? What was, like, the
Squirrel.
scariest hurdle to overcome in opening up your own salon?
Being worried that I wouldn't be able to pay people. Like that was the biggest
Mm,
thing. Like
yeah,
everything ended up okay. And like but like you just never know. Cause like as soon as the key's in your hands, you're responsible. You are responsible. And people are relying on this place to open. They're relying on you to feed their families. So I'm like, it has to be good. It has to work. It has to
yeah.
work.
And so is there any do you have any anxiety like, I mean, you've been open now for what, 3 years? You opened in COVID, didn't
Uh
you?
Almost 6 years.
Oh, 6 years.
It'll
Oh,
be
you had
6 years
did
in
you have another
September.
location or something, or am I making that
I
up?
did. So I opened up in a smaller location first in 2018, and then in
Oh,
2021 I
okay.
moved to this location.
I love that. So, do you ever feel anxious about the weight of responsibility on your shoulders?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that gives me anxiety for sure sometimes. I mean,
And
I
how
chose it.
yeah. How do you deal with anxiety?
Um, hmm.
I stumped you.
Probably
You're like, "I panic, Dawn." That's what I do with anxiety.
I scream.
Yeah.
No, actually, you know what helps a lot though? Like writing things down.
Mm,
When you're
mhm.
trying to process a feeling, just writing it down. I write it right in like my notes app on my phone, and I'll try to process like what emotion I'm feeling.
Yeah.
This is gonna sound really cheesy, but at one point, have you ever heard of like a wheel of emotion?
Mhm.
Or an emotion wheel.
Oh,
I
I've done
found
a
one on
lot of therapy,
Google.
Emily. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So I printed one of those out. I literally had it stuck on like the break room fridge, my fridge at home. Everyone thought I was insane. I am. That's okay. But like I would try to identify what I was feeling. Like, okay, let's say I'm feeling anxious. Like, why am I feeling anxious? Am I feeling anxious because like did I do something that I'm ashamed of? Am I embarrassed? Like, what's the actual feeling behind it? And
Mhm.
sometimes like no action I wouldn't even do anything about it, but just writing it down and identifying the feelings helped a lot
Yep.
because then I could ask myself, why? Why am I feeling that way?
Well, and I find like this is actually a common thread I'm finding in my interviews that I'm doing about this is like emotional awareness and what's the word I'm looking for? Like the ability to observe your emotions without acting on it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I find like that's really cool that you said that because it's something I've heard from other people already too. And I'm like, I think that's such a flex to be able to go inward and be like, okay, like, because usually, like, if you're having a big reaction to something, like my therapist taught me, like, does the reaction match the scenario? Because if it doesn't,
Oh,
it's usually something else. And I read recently, and I posted this on my stories actually today on Instagram, was like when you have a big reaction to something, ask yourself, how old do I feel and what memories pop up about it?
oh
It is like
wow.
mind blowing, Emily, because like I've had moments in the last week where like stuff's happened and I've been like, why am I feeling so strongly this way about that? And then I go, how old do I feel right now? And what memories pop up around this? And it's so enlightening, for lack of a better term, to be like, oh,
Wow.
this literally isn't about that.
Yeah. Or this is
And
13-year-old me right now.
yeah, yeah. And like this feeling or this moment reminded me of the feeling or this moment produced an emotion in me that reminded me of this moment when I concluded X, whatever. And I feel like when you're
Wow,
dealing
I
with
love that.
managing people or when you're dealing with clients, like
Hmm.
and you're dealing with people's self-image, right? It's not like
Yeah.
we make art and then people buy it. We have to like make art on somebody and hope that we understood their words were matching up with the vision in their head.
Right. Right.
which is so stressful.
Oh, I love
Um,
that.
Emotional, what is there's a term that I like, I'm totally blanking on right now. It's like emotional awareness. I don't know.
Emotional intelligence?
Maybe? I don't
Mm,
know. It'll come to me after we're done recording and
yeah,
I'll text it to you.
as soon as we stop.
What is I'm just like looking at my questions that I've written down. What are ways, so two-part question. Do you believe it's important to continue to grow is to make yourself uncomfortable? Like growth.
Yeah.
So what do you do currently to push yourself into the discomfort of growth?
Ooh, well, I mean, I try a lot of new things,
Mhm.
and if something is scaring the shit out of me, I acknowledge it and I say, okay, it's scaring the shit out of me. I should probably do it. And I
I
do
love
it.
that.
I just do it scared,
Mhm.
and I learn
What
from it because I'm either gonna fuck it up and learn from it, or I'm gonna succeed in it.
what is the last thing you did that scared you?
Oh my God, the last thing I did that scared me, honestly, probably like I had butterflies going on stage in New York just a few weeks ago. It was just
I
a
was gonna
big
say
crowd.
karaoke.
Oh my God, the trauma from that. Yeah,
Did you do
karaoke.
karaoke in New York?
Yeah, it was horrifying, but it was a trauma story.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
but yeah, no,
Going on stage.
going on stage, like I had spoken in front of like crowds of that size before, but it's been a really long time. And
Right.
I had butterflies going up there. But I just kind of acknowledged my feelings. I'm like, this is new
Mhm.
and I'm just gonna push through it. And it's okay to be scared. Like I think what helps me a lot is like I try not to tell myself to not be scared
Mhm.
because I think that's bullshit. If you tell yourself don't be scared when you're scared of something, all you're gonna think about is how scared you are. So instead I just say like, okay, like I'm gonna be scared and I'm just gonna like do it scared.
Yeah.
But
Well, and
just
I
do
think, like,
it.
yeah, like, telling yourself, like, not to feel a certain way, it's like, well, then when it is important to be scared,
Mhm.
will you let yourself be scared? Like, if you need to be scared.
Like
Um,
I was so scared to open up my own salon. I was like
yeah.
scared to hire more people. Scared to go live. Oh my God. I avoided going live on social media for so long because for the longest time, all of my Instagram stuff was so curated. I'm sure
Right.
if you scroll all the way down the bottom, which I'm sure you will now that I'm reminding you to do that, it's like it's so curated and like a little cringy. But I just was so afraid to be cringy. I didn't want to
Right.
go on live and say something that I couldn't edit later.
Right. So do you think it's a fear around being seen in being imperfect?
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
And that's something that
Yeah.
I like try to work through
Yeah, and I
constantly.
mean, that's like a very I know you're not alone in that, and I know people listening to this right now will be relating to that hardcore. So because I feel like you show up very authentically in who you are,
Yeah.
and, like, the Emily online and the Emily in person are the same, which is such a breath of fresh air.
Thank
Was
you.
there a turning point, or was there a specific event or time or thing that helped you step into allowing yourself to be human?
um, so I had a conversation with Gina Bianca in 2018
Mhm,
when I met her because like when we first opened, I polled the salon. I'm like, who do you want to see? What are the people? And a bunch of people were like, oh, I want to see Gina Bianca. So I'm like, okay.
mhm,
I just sent her a DM. Like, I'm like, she might ignore me. I don't even know if she'll see it, but I was like, hey, I'm a salon owner in upstate New York, and I was wondering if you do classes. Da, da, da. So anyway, I ended up hiring her. Everyone's freaking out. I'm so excited to have her. And I take her out to dinner. And that night, like I asked her like, I don't know, something. I always ask people like, what are like your top 5 pieces of advice for new business owners? And she was like,
mhm.
you need to go live. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, you need to go live. This is in 2018. I'm like, in my head thinking absolutely not, but I'm like nodding my head. I'm like, okay, yeah, yeah, I should go live. And I just thought about it for like another year or so, but never actually went live.
Thought about it for a year.
And the first time I went live, it was with Nina Tulio. She had reached out to me and she wanted to like do a live whatever interview. And I felt the fear and I just remember thinking, okay, I'm just gonna say yes to it. I'm just gonna do it. This is my time to do it because I'm not gonna do it myself. So I guess
Mhm.
it takes someone reaching out to me to like make myself do it. So I go on and It probably was kind of cringy. I'm cringing a little bit thinking about it, but I'm so glad I did it because it ended, it was over, and I'm like, oh, like I didn't die. So, all right, I didn't die. So like I can do it again. And then I just
Mhm.
kept doing it. I would
I
do
love
little
that.
spurts of going on live.
Yeah. Do you like Brené Brown? I'm a big Brené Brown fan, and she says confidence is born from courage and vulnerability. And so the way to
Mm,
become confident is to be courageous and vulnerable. And I feel like
yeah.
going live is like what like I in 2020 started going live every morning from my bed, and now I call it business breakfast in bedhead.
I love
And
that.
like and it's like no makeup, like messy hair, like I'm just going to let
Mhm.
myself be seen in my true like realness cuz I used to be like gotta have perfect hair, gotta have full makeup, gotta like do this. And I was like I don't want to like for me I was like I felt like it was a barrier that I kept myself from
Mm.
like, I would be like, "Well, I just, like I'm, like, doing work in my office today, and I'm not really, like, put together." So I'll, like, put I used it as a procrastination technique. Um, but where was I going with that? I remember the first time I went live, I think was in 2018, and it was on Facebook, and I literally, like, got a whole outfit together, did my hair, my makeup, and I had
Mhm.
beads of sweat running down my back. And my biggest fear was, like, what will I do if only one person's live? Like, and I don't know who it is. And, like, do you keep talking? Like, I was, like, all in these, like, what ifs. And I found when I get nervous or anxious about anything, and I'm wondering if this applies for you as well, is like the quicker I just start doing it and stop thinking about it, the I
Mm.
may mess up, I may trip over my words, I may embarrass myself, but I've got that one rep in, and so it's a lot easier to take like to do it the next time.
Yes. To just do it.
Yeah, like just don't overthink.
Mhm. It's
And
so
be w
hard to overthink.
I know. And why do
Yeah.
you think like I used to be so scared of failing or making mistakes,
Mhm.
um, and I've learned to embrace it a lot more. And there's still parts and things that scare me, but why do you think we're so scared to make mistakes or have failures when we logically know that that is how you get better and that is where like what leads to success?
Probably trauma.
Right? Being born in the
Gonna be
80s.
honest.
Yeah, you're like, "This isn't this deep." I love it. Um, what has no, did I ask you what your biggest failure has been so far? I think it was that haircut, wasn't it?
My biggest? My God. I've never arranged my failures on like my biggest, second biggest failure, the
Yeah, you're like,
third biggest.
"This one I'm still working on." Okay, well then, to counter that, what has been your biggest success so far? What is the thing you are
Aw.
most proud of?
The thing I'm most proud of is the relationships I've have with all of my like team members and all of my former assistants. Like I'm so proud of the fact that like I still keep in contact with anyone who's ever assisted me. And I have like,
Mm.
I think like 14, 15 now, because I take a new assistant on every single year. And whether they've moved on to another salon, whether they're in another state, like whether they're in the salon down the street from me, like they're still like in my life. And I am so, so proud of that.
That I mean, that speaks to who you are as a person, the fact that you are on good terms with everyone
Ugh.
and that I mean, I can just say firsthand, like, you radiate kindness, authenticity, integrity. Like, when I met you in Nashville, like, I was nervous to meet you, and I was like, "Oh, she's just, like, the realest real ever." And it was like it made my day, Emily. I remember you came up to I think you came up to me while I was getting a glass of water in the back.
Right after your presentation, I want to tell
Yeah,
you how
and you, like,
fucking awesome
gush
you were.
and I was like, I struggle with imposter syndrome. I also struggle to think like, "Oh, like, they're more important than me." And I was like, "Oh, Emily's a big deal," which is funny because I teach people to say I'm a big deal and I can do hard things. But I was like, "Oh my god, like, who am I to be seen by Emily Chen?"
My God. I
So
feel the same way though. I feel the same way sometimes.
yeah, isn't it funny how we, like, demean and diminish ourselves, but think other people are worthy of the things? So I wanted to publicly thank you and acknowledge you for your kindness, your authenticity, and, like, hearing that how you are with your assistants, like, that's just a true testament to your heart, your motivations, and, like, why you do what you do, and I think that is such a cool thing for, like, your biggest success is your relationships. That's pretty cool. So Emily, thank you. So I'm just going to leave it at that because that's a pretty cool place. Thank you so much for taking time to come on the podcast. I have just like one closing question that I like to ask everyone is if you had to pick, would you pick chicken nuggets or nachos?
Oh God, nachos,
Nachos?
nachos.
Yeah,
Yeah,
through and
the
through.
gooey cheese, and you too.
I mean, it depends on my mood. Like if I'm like really depressed and sad, I will go get a chicken nugget meal at McDonald's.
Like chicken nuggets are way more practical. They're not as messy, but they're, I don't
But
know.
like there's something about like the nachos and like I like black olives, some jalapenos, some what else do I put on it? Cheese, beef, like just like it's like
Okay, when
nutritious
you
but also comfort food. What do you put on your nachos?
Oh, everything. Like there's got to be guac. There has to be some sort of gooey cheese,
Mhm.
beef, chicken, whatever, jalapenos. But I feel like the first like 10 bites have like all the toppings only cover 10 bites. And then
Mm.
afterwards I'm just left with like naked chips. But it's
Yeah,
okay
so
because,
you don't mind that.
no, I mean I'll feel good just about like just for I'll feel good about just those first 10 bites. They're just covered in all the toppings,
Yeah.
you know?
So I interviewed Jacob Kahn and he was like, only if the nachos are layered, where it's like chips, cheese, toppings, chip, cheese, toppings, because like he's like, I don't want to get to the bottom and just have a bunch of chips. And I
Oh,
was
like
like,
lasagna.
yeah. And that's how I make my nachos at home. And I was like, you know what, Jacob? I have so much more respect for you now, knowing that.
Wow.
So I feel like asking this question really gives me a lot of feedback on people.
See, okay, I feel like I'm not mad about all the toppings being on top because I feel like the chip is really only a vehicle to get the topping into your mouth. But I don't really
Mm.
care for the chip. So if I can get 100% of the toppings in my mouth using only 10 chips, I feel good about it.
Calorie wise,
Efficiency.
efficiency. I am.
Calorie wise, all the calories are in the toppings. I'm just eating
I
like
know.
a
I
thousand
know.
calories of toppings with 10
Yeah.
chips.
I am like, I love like there's nothing that gets me excited more than efficiency. So I love
That's
that.
right.
Yeah. Emily, where can people connect with you more? How can people stay in touch?
Mainly on Instagram at mchenhair and on TikTok.
And TikTok. I have
And
not got on the
yep,
TikTok train.
no,
I
it
got
might
to.
be over soon. I think they're getting banned, but
That's what I heard. Well, I'm in Canada, so
oh yeah,
you want? I got a
we
spare
might
room.
still have TikTok.
Yeah.
Yeah.
M Chen Hair on Instagram and TikTok. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come speak with us. And yeah, maybe one more question. What advice would you give to someone who's struggling with a failure that they've recently gone through?
To acknowledge your failure and learn from it, and that it's a stepping stone, and don't beat yourself up for it, right? There's no success without failure. Hang on, let me just say it again. There's no success without failure. So fail your way up.
Boom.
Boom.
Well, there you have it, friend. Another episode of the Anxious Creative Podcast because of you. Thank you so much for tuning in. It means the world to me. And if you want to dive deeper into communication, boundaries, and confidence, go check out my website, dawnbradley.com, for all the resources and programs that can help you build the life, business, and bank account you've always dreamed of. You're worth it, friend. And I'm just so honored and thankful for you to be here and to be part of this community so we can show up real, raw, honest, and vulnerable together, sharing in our failures and our successes because it's all part of the journey. It's all part of it. And so I want you to be able to take messy, immediate, imperfect action going out from this podcast episode into the world today and have a wonderful, wonderful day. But most importantly, stay weird, friend. And we'll see you next time.